Listeners, beware. This podcast contains themes of the macabre and does not shy away from the details. Our content is graphic and our language is colorful. We might not be your cup of tea, so listener discretion is strongly advised. Tuned in to The Killer Tea, a podcast hosted by two best friends with a proclivity to decipher the deeply demented minds of murderers.
Welcome to episode 11 of The Killer Tea, where we'll be discussing Dr. Death, Harold Shipman.
We are your hosts, Christina
and Chelsea.
And for the next hour, we will be the purveyors of some moderately fucked up bullshit.
Moderately.
Actually, while this one isn't substantially disgusting, as in like grotesque and
it is
gooey.
It is disturbing.
It is disturbing and disgusting for the sheer volume of confirmed kills.
Yeah. I mean,
deeply upsetting for the amount of people.
You're supposed to be able to trust your doctor, right?
Yeah. Dr. Death, ladies and gentlemen. And upon our research, I found out that there's like two other Dr. Deaths.
There are, I know. Like, what is this?
Yeah, this is a scary fucking weird thing that is a thing.
Oh, God.
But I digress. So we are going to be talking about Dr. Death from the UK.
Right.
And we actually will have a very special surprise visitor who's going to drop in and give us some little UK knowledge just so we can kind of understand the culture.
Yes, agreed.
Because it does kind of play a role in it. So our friend Melanie is going to stop in here later on in the episode to kind of discuss some Britishness stuff to you.
Britishness stuff.
Britishness.
Well,
but anyways,
we've got an announcement though before we kind of dive into this.
What's our announcement? I forgot.
So Christina is not up on our Instagram and what we're doing apparently.
Oh, wait, I remember you told me about this 5 minutes ago.
So we are actually going to be hosting a live Q&A on our Instagram next Sunday, which is the 19th. Probably around 5 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to be announcing the time as it gets closer on our Instagram in the stories. So just keep an eye out on that if you follow us there. And if you want to submit some questions for us, you can send us a message or send us an email. They can be personal. They can be about the podcast. They can be about our interest in true crime.
Anything,
really. Whatever you feel.
And if, it's out of bounds, we'll tell you it's out of bounds.
We'll tell you it's out of bounds.
But, yeah, just clear your schedules for the evening because that's just how Chelsea and I roll kind of with timing.
It really is. We're going to try to pick like a time and stick to it, but, give or take a few minutes.
This is just who we are.
It's just who we are as people. Also, we have a Twitter now.
Yeah, we have a Twitter. We did a thing.
I caved and was doing research on how to get our podcast more out there and more recognized, and it said we need a Twitter. So
she made one.
I made one.
I mean, I'll get on it and do like dad jokes and that kind of stuff. But if you want me to be paying attention to how the Twitterverse works.
I don't even understand how the Twitterverse works.
There's so many things. And listen, it's not even like we're older than the era of Twitter. Twitter came out when we were young, hot women.
I just don't understand how it works.
Give a shit about Twitter.
I don't understand how it works. Like, I have a personal Twitter. I have 2 followers.
Yeah.
And I literally only use it to follow the makeup gurus that I like.
But, I mean, if you want to help us learn, feel free to reach out, hold our hand, make us Padawans.
Tell us how to do the Twitter thing.
Do the thing, score the points. Stuff.
Yay, sports.
Yay, sports. So, I didn't tell you this.
Uh-oh.
But I downloaded TikTok because I'm trying to be active on
TikTok.
I
hate it.
TikTok.
They're all babies.
Yes, you have to give it time.
They're all
You have
infants.
to give it time because as you like videos, it starts to show you things that are more like your humor. And I seriously sit on TikTok for like 2 hours every night and just laugh my ass off the whole time.
Me and Mel are on it, and we're like, why is this infant in a bra dancing around? I guess we should actually talk about good old Harry, Freddie.
Yeah, I think that's all of our announcements.
What are we going to call him, by the way? Because he goes by Fred.
He's Harold.
I know.
He's Harold.
Okay, well, I'm going to call him
because
Shipman the shithead, so.
Harold is a piece of shit name.
Yeah.
So I'm going with Harold.
Yeah, fuck you, Harold. And all you other Harolds out there. Not really, I'm sorry.
Not really.
We're just kidding. But anyways, Harold Shipman.
Would you like to set the scene?
Yeah, I'll set the scene.
Do it.
We're gonna go way back when? Into the early
40s.
Oh my God.
That's not that way back.
It's 2020, Chelsea.
Yeah, but we just talked about Elizabeth Bathory
I know,
last
but this
week,
is still
which was in the 15 and 1600s.
Like, that's still a long time ago.
Okay.
Let's be okay, anyway.
I still think it's the 1990s, okay? So.
Yeah, clearly. Like, where are you at, girl? Harold Frederick Shipman was born on a council estate in Nottinghamshire, England, on the 14th of January, 1946. I had our friend Melanie come in and visit my studio. I just opened a photography studio here in Mooresville, and Melanie is from Milton Keynes, which is about 3 hours away from Nottingham. Chelsea has been to Nottingham when she was a youngin', and yes. I have been to Nottingham like 2 or 3 times. It's actually a very cute, beautiful village. Mm-hmm. I had Melanie, when she came in to visit, kind of talk to you guys about what a council estate is, because it's not exactly like the projects, but it's similar to that. So I'm going to insert a clip here of Mel kind of explaining council estates, because it is actually important about learning the kind of community that he came from and the kind of community that he ends up serving.
Right. And as Shoobs from the Potterless podcast would say, our British correspondent,
Melanie Taylor, who has nothing to do with true crime whatsoever. No. She just literally dropped in and was British, and I was like, hey, do the thing. You want to come on our podcast? I hope this doesn't offend you. And it didn't. So insert the clip of Melanie here.
Council estates, they're everywhere in every county.
Okay.
And a council estate is affordable housing.
Is it provided by the government?
Yes. And each city has their own council.
What I'm interested in is this particular serial killer that we're talking about had like a seemingly normal life in Nottingham, growing up in a council estate.
Yes.
And are they okay places to live?
They are, yeah. Depending on where you live is where, the problem areas. So if there is no work and there's unemployment, the council estates are going to reflect that.
So Rob grew up on a council estate, and his experience of it was in the 80s. It was very family oriented, and
very.
Like, people would watch each other's kids, and everybody knew everybody's business, but it was a big sense of community.
And it is in most, and also in those type of council estates as well. So the sense of community, so I giggle because I know where Rob is from. And, let's put you in a picture. You've got your mum in rollers smoking a fag, and she walks out the garden, which is your back door, and you have a garden play area, or it would be a communal area, while smoking the fag, and she then strikes up a conversation with the next door neighbour, which his name could be Larry, and he's wearing a wife-beater vest, right? And then she shouts, Bobby, it's time for dinner, come in, Bobby! So basically, there is nothing wrong with that, but and their family dynamic will be the same loving, but their
working class.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then it is very similar to kind of our subsidized HUD housing that we have here.
Basically.
So my husband, who lived about 45 minutes to an hour away from Nottingham, described it as a really nice place to live, that it was a very, very large city. And of course, like any other big city, it does have its rough parts, but also it's just a cute village. And he said kind of like the picturesque of English life. What you think of British people is a lot of what Nottinghamshire is like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his family was not super well off, but they weren't really poor. They were kind of
that weird in-between place. His dad was a working class man, and the community that they were surrounded in was working class. Everyone there helped raise each other's children. It was a strong community, and his dad was a lorry driver, which is the American equivalent of a truck driver.
correct.
The difference between a lorry driver and a truck driver here in America is lorry drivers typically are working 9 to 5 and they're home at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a much more family-friendly career, if you will.
Whereas if
A
you're a
long-haul
trucker
trucker
here,
or
you're a
anything like
long-haul
that.
trucker.
Yeah.
So his mom and dad were home, and his mom was a very loving mom. He had a relatively normal childhood with a... How do I want to describe this? Mom was a bit overbearing.
Well, he was considered the favorite child of his mother, and his parents were also Harold. Like, Harold's a junior, first of all. His dad, Harold, and then his mother, Vera, had 3 children, and he was the middle child, which so weird that the middle child
I know.
is the favorite.
Usually it's the baby or like the oldest child.
Right? I mean, it's really interesting, and it was well known that he was his mother's favorite child.
He was kind of a distant child, but he wasn't weird. He didn't torture animals. He wasn't abusive.
He
or
was a pretty
aggressive.
normal child.
He was just quiet. And
He had a little bit of a superiority complex, but I think that truly came from
his
all
mom.
the special treatment that his mother gave him. And when I say special treatment, like, she wouldn't really punish him if he got into trouble, and he kind of got away with a lot. And I think that kind of starts off his mentality that he can do no wrong.
I think his mom wanted one of her kids to be exceptional. I think this is projection.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. She definitely was hard on all of her children as far as, you know,
Schooling. She wasn't
and-
cruel.
no, she just expected a high level of...
She wanted her kids to do well in academia. The oldest one, his 15-year-old sister, she wasn't particularly gifted. She left school at 15. And then the youngest, well, he wasn't as bright as his older brother. None of these kids are stupid. They're just
they're just not exceptional.
Yeah.
But I think she really wanted her
She
children to
wanted
be
them to
exceptional.
be
And so she decided to really push Harold.
He did really well on his 11 plus test his last year of grammar school, which is essentially junior high, I think.
Junior high.
And that's basically a placement test that everybody takes. And if you do really, really well, you can go to a specialized school that has more prestigious children that are performing really well.
At a higher level.
At a higher level.
It's
So-
interesting to note that he wasn't really like antisocial or anything, but he very much kept himself on like the fringe of his group of friends.
Because his mom was demanding, not with ill intent and not to be cruel, but like putting a lot of pressure on him to perform well in school and to study. She also kind of cherry picked his friends and the people that he surrounded himself with.
Oh, she did that to all of her children.
Yeah, because
They were only allowed to hang out with the most, you know, exceptional, well-behaved, well-to-do children in their neighborhood, and I think that just carried over into his school friends as well.
which is ironic because he actually really wasn't gifted. So he gets into this prestigious school called High Pavement, and when he's surrounded by all of these other children who are actually exceptionally intelligent,
Right.
he's just mediocre. He's
Yeah.
just, getting by. There's nothing really special about him other than he is actually very gifted with playing rugby. The thing is not academia, but rugby as a
Yeah,
sport.
but
He's
think
good
of
at that.
like how many people in the States though, like they're not exceptionally great at schoolwork, but they might be an exceptional football player or basketball player. I mean, that's not really that surprising. I mean, rugby is the British football.
Yeah, very much so. So Vera and Harry were very close throughout, his entire life, all the way up until the point where she was diagnosed and died of lung cancer in 1963. Harold witnessed her get sicker and sicker.
Oh, when she was diagnosed, he very much stepped up to the plate as her caregiver.
Yeah, he was by her side the whole time.
And while his dad kind of distanced himself a little bit, and I don't think he did that in a malicious way, I just don't think he knew how to kind of cope with his wife being so sick. And so Harold really kind of stepped up to the plate as her caregiver and was there for her through pretty much all of her illness, and actually signed as witness on all the times that the doctor gave her morphine to help with her pain, because at that time when she was sick, doctors had to have a witness when they were injecting morphine, and so he was actually there and served as the legal witness for most of those times when she was injected, and he kind of got to see firsthand the effects that morphine would have on her, and how much peace it bring her.
And to ease her pain and her suffering. And I think that, it's obvious that this imprinted on him.
Oh, yeah.
For the rest of his life.
This is what inspired him to go to medical school. Up until she was sick, he had never had any interest in going into the medical field. And then once she was diagnosed with lung cancer, because, you got to think, like, in this early 60s, late 50s, if you were diagnosed with lung cancer, that was it. It was just a long, painful road to dying.
He didn't tell his friends that she was sick. He didn't tell anyone that she was sick. She passed away. Like, she died. And his friends, he went to school. She passed away over the weekend, and he went to school on Monday.
And his friends were all, "Oh, what did you do this weekend?" And he's like, "Oh, my mom died." People were like, "What?"
The day that she died, he told his family, "I'm going to go for a run." And he dressed in running shorts and a t-shirt, and then he ran all through the night in the pouring rain, and for hours and for miles, and then came back home. So
it clearly affected him.
Everybody processes death differently.
Yeah.
A thing that I kind of wondered is they talk about when you have someone in your family that has cancer, has terminal cancer, and there's a lot of caregiving going on, that when their time comes, you feel both devastated and also a sense of relief, because your role as the caretaker, the burden has been lifted. And some people, that's a happy burden that they took on, without guilt, without anger, without any of that stuff. And then others, it's a duty that weighs really, really
heavily on them.
Heavily on them. And I can't help but to wonder, for a 17-year-old child, because that is exactly what a 17-year-old is, a developing child, to A, be processing losing your mother, and then be witnessing her go and all of her treatment, and then being her caregiver. I can't help but wonder if he is gonna forever have these parallel feelings of...
Well, I think at this point he is older. He's not, a little boy, but he is associating love and death together at this point. And, he's witnessing her being injected with morphine, and the comfort that would bring her and the peace that it would bring her. So I'm sure he's making these associations between the morphine and the pain and the death and loving her.
I also have another thing that struck me as I was researching him. It seems like out of nowhere he has this addiction to morphine. And I wondered if, when he saw what was going on with his mom, if he wasn't actually taking some of her morphine.
I mean, I don't know. The drug that he used the most was actually called, oh my gosh, I had it in my notes. Where did it go?
It's the medical term for fancy morphine, isn't it?
No, it's Demerol.
Oh, okay. Demerol is what they give people. Prime example.
He killed people with dimorphine, which is morphine, but he was actually taking,
If it's
It's called pethidine. That's what he was taking, and it's a generic form of Demerol.
okay, so Demerol, I'm allergic to morphine. I can't have morphine.
Right.
They give you Demerol instead of that, but it's essentially
It's very similar. It's an
Morphine.
opioid, and the thing with Demerol, if you've never had it, it gives you feelings of euphoria.
it made me black out.
Well, you're allergic.
No, I mean
Oh, you mean
Demerol. Demerol.
Yes, but it also can give you feelings of euphoria. And at this point in time, this is what they gave women who were in labor
Oh my God, did they really?
because it acts as a muscle relaxer and it has feelings of euphoria. And so they would give low doses to women who were in labor because it would help them to relax.
All I can think of is my memory of coming out of surgery because I had my gallbladder removed 2 weeks after my daughter was born. And my mom told them that she needs to have Demerol. And so I wake up out of this surgery and they're giving me Demerol. As soon as I had the clarity, the Demerol goes in your arm and it burns so bad. And then it's almost like that feeling when you're underneath water and you look up and it's all like foggy
You
and
might just
dreamlike.
be super, super sensitive to like any and all pain medicine.
I was like, what is this?
I've never been on Demerol, but I've had like Vicodin and stuff, and Vicodin makes me feel very loopy and very sleepy. But yeah, at this point in time, pethidine is essentially Demerol, and they would give it to pregnant women who were in labor.
Damn. Okay.
And yeah,
So, all right. Yeah, I kind of had wondered if maybe he had started, because at 17, you know, a lot of kids experiment with drugs and alcohol, if maybe he had slipped a few of his mom's opiates. And
I don't think at that point it would have been possible because it was a doctor that was injecting her, and he had to bear witness to it. So unless the doctor was in on giving it to him, it was always an injection. It
yeah,
wasn't like
I
it
didn't
was
read the part that a doctor had to be present.
It wasn't like it was a pill that she could take, and he could have
Okay,
slipped
well,
some.
my theory is garbage then. Thanks. Jeez.
You're welcome.
So, what Chelsea had said earlier was that he was not interested in becoming a doctor until after his mom died, according to everybody who knew him.
Oh yeah.
So, he decides to go to school for medicine, and he ends up attending the Leeds School of Medicine.
Can we just point out really quick that he was not a good student, and
Oh,
he
no.
had to take most of his classes twice, and had to take the entrance exam twice because he's just
Wasn't exceptional?
he wasn't exceptional.
Yeah, he was an average dude trying to become a doctor. But he did eventually,
Oh yeah, he graduated in 1970 from Leeds University of Medicine.
on his daily commute to the Leeds School of Medicine, he actually met his wife on the bus. Her name's Primrose. And she had
Primrose Aberdeen. Sorry.
actually going all Katniss on you. So he met Prim, and she dropped out of grammar school.
She was younger than him too.
Yeah, she was 15 when she dropped out, but then when he met her at this time, she was actually going to art and design. And she had a very similar upbringing to what he did. Her parents were not crazy Christians, but they were Methodists, and they were very disciplined.
Yeah.
You know,
Her parents were very disciplined, and probably maybe even a little bit more so than his parents. And they were actually horrified that she was dating Harold. They were not cool with this. They did not care for him. And then he goes and knocks her up.
6 months later.
Yeah, she was 17 and he was 19 when they finally got married, and she was 5 months pregnant, and her family was not happy.
They did not approve of this whole thing.
During this time, while he was finishing up school, is when he actually began using the pethidine.
Okay.
And this is where he starts using it as kind of like a coping mechanism to the stress of school.
So they would go on to have 4 kids. After he eventually graduates from Leeds in 1970, he would begin training at the Pontefract General Infirmary as a junior doctor. And he would go on to receive his medical license a year later. And this is when something interesting and
This is terrifying to me.
yeah.
He is working as a junior doctor, and the entire time he is doing this, he is forging his own prescriptions for pethidine.
Yeah, he's addicted. He's an addict.
An addict. So he is using essentially Demerol while he's still learning how to be an actual doctor and is performing medicine on people and treating patients while he's high.
So a controversial thing happens here. Shortly after he graduates and he's a real full-fledged doctor, his first murder happens. Whether or not it's a mercy killing or an actual intentional killing,
Who knows?
who knows? But he was treating a terminally ill 4-year-old girl when the mother was leaving the room to go get a cup of tea, and she said to him to please be kind to her.
Right.
Which he then interpreted as
End her suffering. And he gave her a lethal injection of morphine. But the mom, this is where, if that is actually what the mom meant, okay, first of all, you had literally just taken your vow to never do that. No harm. It literally, I don't know what it is in England, but I know in the United States, part of your medical vow is to do no harm.
Part of I can't remember the exact quote, but I've heard it before. It's part of the actual vow is that you say you won't do exactly this.
Oh, yeah.
Like that you won't kill someone for mercy, essentially. In the British one. I don't know. If I can find it, I'll add it in here later. But so the mom is going to go get tea while this is happening. And if you would think that if that's actually what the mom would want, she would have wanted to be in the room with her daughter as her daughter was passing away. But then, this guy clearly has some attachment issues and relationship understanding issues, so maybe he just didn't get it. I don't know. Regardless, I think he thought it was a mercy killing. I don't think it was like, I'm gonna maliciously kill this little girl.
Well, let's be real though. All of his murders in his mind were mercy killings.
Yeah, I
don't think he ever killed anyone out of maliciousness. I mean, maybe a couple of them.
I think the last one.
The last one I think was financial.
But that's what I mean. I think it wasn't a mercy
most
killing.
of the people that he killed were elderly or very sick.
So I made a little note here for myself to contemplate something, and which is essentially what you're saying is, did he see his own pain and suffering that he went through as the caretaker to a terminally ill person in the mother of the child, and thought that he was doing both of these two people a favor? Was it an intentional murder or a intentional mercy killing of the girl?
I don't know.
It's I think
really interesting to speculate on, though.
When he was killing these people, and there was a lot of people that he killed, I think that he thought of himself a bit like
an angel of death.
Yeah, he was seeing himself and the families and the burden that he felt that he carried, that he projected onto them, that he probably assumed that they were carrying, but then also giving somebody a peaceful death. But a lot of these people that he killed were elderly and they didn't need
but they
care.
Weren't always very sick.
But they weren't always. Some of them were just fine.
Some of them are in excellent health. So I don't know.
But
that's. I don't know. Moving on. So in 1974, he actually joins a family medical practice in Todmorden.
Todmorden?
I don't know. And it's in Yorkshire. And he continued forging prescriptions for large amounts of pethidine. And he was actually caught by his colleagues in 1975 and was forced into drug rehab. He lost his job and he had to pay a fine and face a forgery conviction.
Yeah, that's great. But then he does the drug rehab, and they're like, you're cured.
Yeah, so he's still allowed to practice medicine after this, right?
How?
I mean, people have drug addictions, right?
Yeah,
it
but
happens.
you should. But I don't know.
And
okay, we're gonna.
I mean, that's a whole other ethical dilemma. If you are the unfortunate victim of addiction because
It's a disease.
It's a disease. People do become addicted to things. Should you forever lose your career because of that?
Medical career? Yes.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true, because people can become alcoholics and that's addiction. If you go through the rehab and you're sober, should you never be allowed to practice medicine again?
Yeah, if you were coming to work high, that's malpractice. I don't think that someone deserves to be able to practice medicine ever again if they were operating or seeing patients while under the influence of opioids or drugs. It's malpractice. Anybody who's listening, give us your opinion.
It's a huge ethical dilemma. I mean, look, okay, I know you're not a Grey's Anatomy fan.
No, I've literally never watched a single episode. 2
doctors in Grey's Anatomy are past addicts. Well, they're addicts, but they're recovered. Mm-hmm. One of them is an alcoholic, and he goes through rehab, and he goes to AA meetings, and he's like the head of all the interns and students. Mm-hmm. And his struggle with his addiction is big in the show. Oh. And then there's another doctor, oh my God, Amy is her name, Amy Shepard, and she has a problem with pain medicine. Mm-hmm. And she was an addict, and she hit rock bottom, and her and her boyfriend were together, and her boyfriend overdosed and killed himself, and she woke up to his dead body.
Oh my God.
In the show.
And
that was her, like, holy fucking shit, what am I doing with my life? And she was actually forging prescriptions for pain pills.
Oh, like this dude.
Yes, exactly like this dude. But her boyfriend...
She didn't go on and probably kill people, I'm assuming.
No. She's a very, like, gifted neurosurgeon. Oh. And so she wakes up next to her dead boyfriend, finds out she's pregnant after this happens with her boyfriend's baby.
This is
and
too
then
much.
Her baby is born with this rare disease where his brain doesn't develop fully. Uh-huh. And so the baby just dies. And she's like forever traumatized because she loses her boyfriend and her baby in the span of a year. Uh-huh. So she goes to rehab and she gets clean. And that's another part of the show.
Is that the famous Pinterest quote, "You didn't love her, you loved the idea of her"?
No. That's Meredith. That's a whole other story.
Okay.
Whole other story in Grace.
Anyways.
But the whole point, though, is that Amy is this very gifted and talented neurosurgeon, and she is an addict, but she knows that she's an addict. And so anytime she has an injury or something happens to her on the show, she always tells them, like, I can't have pain medicine. You can't give me pain medicine. And so she declines any pain management that is like an opioid or anything like that. Like, the most she'll take is like an ibuprofen. And they go to AA meetings all the time, and they talk about addiction in the show.
Everything that this guy didn't do.
Obviously, I'm just saying, in the ethical dilemmas, should people lose their medical license if they're addicts and they become sober?
I don't know, audience. We kind of went off on a tangent, but why don't you tell us?
Weigh in on
it.
Send us a message on Instagram.
Judgment-free zone. Just curious.
Yes.
Just curious.
So,
anyways, where were we?
He leaves rehab. Everyone thinks he's fine, hunky-dory. So this is 1977, and this is where he goes to the Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde.
Something that you should kind of understand about him, where there might not be a lot of signs of being a serial killer popping up here. One of the things that I noticed people that knew him who were being interviewed kept saying was he was a bit of a manic, which being... Here, this checked off a few boxes for me, that A, he didn't form a lot of strong connections, relationships, or bonds. Mm-hmm. He was slightly antisocial and had manic tendencies, especially with upkeep and cleanliness. And
do you think he was maybe bipolar?
I don't know.
I don't necessarily think he has APD or that he's a psychopath, because obviously he was very close to his mother, and him and his wife had a relationship. But I don't necessarily think that he had antisocial personality disorder, or that he was a psychopath. I think that he was a narcissist, and I think that he may have been bipolar because his patients loved him. But some of the junior medical staff were skeptical of him and said that he was very arrogant.
I guess my point in bringing that up is that maybe it's not APD and maybe it's not...
sociopathy?
Yes, but maybe it is something.
I mean, like we talked about, I don't necessarily think he was like, I'm going to kill people.
Yeah, but I think that describing it as manic is an interesting thing because I don't associate someone who is, maybe very stringent, maybe very...
I mean, he could be a little OCD.
Or OCD or whatever. I don't associate that with manic. I think manic is a really strong word, and I think it's really telling, especially as a doctor.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I have ideas. I have suspicions.
So he's at Donnybrook, and
he's at Donnybrook.
He stays there for almost 2 decades.
And he's just a general practitioner there.
But again, like we said, he passed himself off as a very hardworking and caring doctor. He was very well liked by his patients and most of his colleagues, but he did have a reputation for being a little arrogant.
And he wouldn't let the nurses handle stupid, meticulous little things that nurses normally handle.
He was very much a loner, and he liked to take care of his patients on his own and frequently declined any help from nurses. Now, that's where it's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's declining help from nurses. He's taking care of his patients basically entirely on his own. And he gets a little bit flustered when they introduce computer systems into the practice. Because up until this point, everything's been done on paper charts, right?
Yeah, something that's more easily
now,
able to be manipulated.
He's been there for 2 decades. So that means he's there in the 80s and the early 90s. So they've introduced computer systems at this point, right? And they're using computer systems to keep track of patients' medical records. And he is not cool with this. He doesn't like it. He's not a fan of medical record keeping in electronics because the electronic record shows when the data was entered and by whom. And I think that he panicked about this because we know he was doing this. He was not keeping accurate records.
No, and he was grooming the entire community of people around him. So if you were going to have access to more accurate records that collectively people could go back and his nurses could go back and reference,
right,
and see these patterns of
emerging.
People dying shortly after he's visited with them, like, word's going to get around fast.
Right. It's very suspicious and very weird. And one thing that I heard when I was listening to a video about him is they said that he was very caring towards his patients, but when that patient passed away, he would often become really cold to their family members. Almost as if their family members were now like an inconvenience to him.
Interesting.
Which I think is very weird and interesting and kind of telling.
So while Melanie was here, I picked her brain about general practitioners and home visits and the role of what the doctor-patient relationship was like in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Because Melanie is 50 years old, so she grew up in England with the GPs coming to her house for labor and delivery, for checkups, and she kind of explained, actually, I'll drop it in here for you guys to be able to hear everything that we were talking about. But she did explain that she's not surprised how he totally went without question or people figuring out what was going on for so long, because in the council estates, you do have such a tight-knit community and family, and then your GP is the GP for your village. So
right.
Everybody knows them. They have a strong bond with them. They're delivering your babies. Anytime somebody's got a cold, like, you have a lot of face-to-face time with them.
Yeah, and I mean, and it wasn't unusual for your doctor to come to your home to take care of you.
Well, here is a clip of Melanie talking a little bit more about GPs
and home visits,
just so you can kind of understand the community and doctor-patient relationship of the time. I mean, I can't think of when I think in the 70s house calls stopped being something here in America, but it seems like he was still doing house calls into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's still practiced now. when you move into a subdivision, so you're in Mooresville, whatever side of Mooresville, and you have all the various doctor surgeries and surgery.
When you say doctor surgeries, that's just general practitioners?
General practitioner. Surgery is not surgery I'm going to operate you on. It is
It's your normal family doctor.
the clinic. It is where you go. It's their office.
Oh,
So
okay.
that is a surgery. It's the office. I have to go to the doctors that are within that catchment area. So the catchment area could be within 10 miles of Bradville. Okay, so that's my doctor's surgery. I can't go to a doctor's surgery that's 10 miles down, 30 miles down the road.
Oh,
so
because
I
of the
can't.
universal healthcare?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't pick and choose. And so house calls, and that was the reason. See, if I chose a surgery that was 30 miles down the road, that doctor is not going to come and see me in my house.
Okay.
But I'm within the catchment area, that doctor will do a house call. So it's a common practice for doctors to go and see you in your house.
The big thing here that baffles everyone is this guy ultimately resulted in the death of 250 older women in particular, by overdosing them with injections of morphine. It took 20 some years before anyone reported him, and everybody else was going on and on about how trusting he was and friendly he was, and I'm guessing it's because they all saw him. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. But I wanted to ask you about that because that's just not something that we...
It's not deemed here.
Yeah.
No, because you can pick and choose where you go and,
They must have really, really trusted this guy where they didn't suspect anything.
No, and especially the older generation, because then in the
that's very
90s,
true.
the older generation where they couldn't come out, and the doctor would do his housely visits, and that, whether it will be just a checkup.
It's crazy the amount
Yeah.
of trust that must have existed.
Exactly,
in order
and
for that.
that's probably the ego of him
Yeah. Oh.
that kept him going, because he had that. He was
knew
playing.
that
He
they
was playing God.
Yeah. He
He
knew
knew.
that they all trusted him and
Yeah.
liked him, and
Yeah.
that he would be able to take advantage of that.
To know that I'm welcoming you into my home, sitting you down, having a cup of tea.
So if he's living in a council estate and servicing people in a council estate, I mean, it's like a little community then.
Oh yes,
Huh.
yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I needed then. Thank you again. He goes on killing for a couple more years, and then finally he done fucks up.
He screws the hell up. On June 24th of 1998, he kills his last victim.
This was actually a really clumsy attempt at fraud that I'm surprised he thought he was going to get away with.
Well, to be fair, he had done this before. He had altered his patient's wills to leave him with financial gain. But it wasn't always anything crazy. It was little things here and there. They would leave him, a couple $100. They would leave him a beloved pet. They would leave him some jewelry. They would leave him something small that wouldn't have been noted as weird or excessive. But Kathleen Grundy was actually the former mayor of Hyde, and she was well known in the community.
Yeah, it wasn't like this was a low profile.
No,
What,
and
of all
she
things,
was-
of all people to pick.
And she was in very good health. Like, she wasn't sickly. She was an older woman, but she wasn't sickly. She didn't have any terminal illnesses or anything like that. But Shipman was the last person to see her alive. He actually had her come in to his office under the guise of needing to run some blood work, right?
Yeah.
And whatever. He has her sign paperwork, which she, I'm sure, assumed was for the blood work. But what it actually was a whole brand new will that Harold had written up. And this stupid motherfucker puts that she was leaving him basically everything.
Yeah.
It completely excluded her daughter and her daughter's children and left 386,000 pounds to Shipman. And here's where he even fucked up even more. Her daughter, Angela Woodruff, is a fucking lawyer. She's a lawyer, and she's the one who wrote up her mother's original will.
She immediately was like,
What?
And the other thing about her is that her mom was very meticulous and kept well-organized documents of everything. So the manner in which this will was written out and how things were left behind, and there's just no way that her mother ever would have done that, ever.
And she found it so odd that she initially didn't even report it. Initially, she was just like, what? This can't be right. But eventually, the solicitor, his name was Brian Burgess, who informed her that a new will had been made. When she expressed concern and was like, this can't be right, he told her to report it to the police. So Angela did go to the police and said, there's no flipping way. I'm the one who wrote up my mother's original will. I'm an attorney. There's no reason my mother would ever go to anyone else. And the police began an investigation. And they eventually ended up exhuming Grundy's body. And when they examined it, they found that it contained traces of diamorphine, which is often used for pain control in terminal cancer patients.
Shipman had insisted that there was no need for an autopsy.
No.
Even though this perfectly healthy 81-year-old woman who only came in for blood work just dropped dead.
Right. Like, she was found dead in her home, and Shipman was the last person who saw her.
No wonder it took you so many turns to get your fucking medical license, because you are, in fact,
A dumbass.
Fucking idiot. I just want to like shake him. Like, who did you think this was going to fool? But again, narcissistic personality disorder, they always think they're the smartest fucking people in the room.
They really, really do. So they exhume her body. They find it contains traces of diamorphine, and he is arrested on September 7th of 98. Well, police then are like,
let's do a deep dive.
This is suspicious. So they start investigating other deaths that Harold had signed off on, and ended up creating a list of 15 cases that they wanted to investigate. And they actually dug up more bodies and tested more of his past patients, and started finding that this diamorphine was showing up in all of them. They figure out that he's been administering lethal doses of morphine and then signing patients' death certificates and then forging the medical records indicating that they had been in poor health, or that they had had cancer, or that they had been ill. I heard one story where there was one of his patients was having an asthma attack, and her daughter had called him to say, hey, I need to bring my mother in. She's having an asthma attack. I just need you to help her get through this. And Shipman was like, you know what? I'm going to come to your house. There's no need for you to come to my office. Not a problem. So he goes there, injects this poor woman with morphine, and then tells her daughter that her mother is too sickly and needs to call an ambulance to take her to the hospital. And this woman, the paramedics actually save her. Like, she doesn't die right away. And she was in a coma, I think, for like 40-something days before she finally passes away. Can you imagine how much he was probably shitting his pants?
Oh, he was probably losing his goddamn mind.
Because
let's be real.
It wouldn't have made any sense for this woman to go into a coma the way she did over an asthma attack.
He eventually gets convicted of 15 counts of murder.
Oh, yeah. 15 counts of murder.
In 2000. But then, in 2002, the Crown is like, nay, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
We need a full-fledged, what they eventually call the SHIPMAN inquiry.
Yes.
And this is spearheaded by
Chris Gregg. So in January of 2001, Chris Gregg was a senior West Yorkshire detective, and he was selected to lead an investigation into 22 of the West Yorkshire deaths that were thought to be related to Shipman. And following this, a report into Shipman's activities was submitted in July of 2002 and concluded that he had killed at least 215 of his patients between 1975 and 1998. Well, because of this, Janet Smith was the judge who submitted the report.
Yeah, the lady
She
justice.
was like, this can't possibly be right. So she goes on to create another report. It's the 6th report made on him. And that was issued on January 24th of 2005 is when she finally finished it. And she reported that she believed Shipman had killed
215 is the confirmed number with the suspicion of 260.
or in total up to 459 people died under his care. And 250 of those was thought he'd murdered them. Like 459 patients died total under his care, but they suspect that 250 to 260 he actually murdered.
In the inquiry alone, it took 2,500 witness statements, analyzed 270,000 pages of evidence, and in total, the entire report was 5,000 pages. The investigation cost 21 million pounds.
Now, keep in mind, he had already been convicted at this point. Like, he was convicted in 2000. Like, they deliberated for 6 days and were like, 15 life terms for you, buddy. Like, you're a piece of shit.
You're done.
And then his name was actually erased from the Register of Medical Practitioners in England in February of 2000.
January 13th, 2004, right before his birthday, the day before his birthday.
And right before this last and final report is issued on him.
He actually, like the coward that he is,
Hangs himself.
hangs himself with bed sheets in the fucking cell because
He can't handle being in prison.
he can't handle being in prison. And while he was in prison, he actually saved the life of another inmate that was having, I think, a seizure on the ground or something along
Something
those lines.
along those lines. I mean, this dude is just, I don't get it. I really think, okay, to back up, you can find victim lists online, and I will admit that I started to type it out with the dates and the ages of everyone that he killed, and I was like 3 pages deep of typed names, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop. Like, this is crazy. He killed upwards of 250 people. That's a lot of fucking people. But I would say probably about 90% were women between the ages of 60 and 90. They were mostly elderly women.
Did you know that his wife profusely said that he was innocent?
Yeah, she
Even after the conviction.
Yep, she refused to believe that he was guilty.
Which is, I mean, I don't know. I believe in soulmates and I believe in the love of your life, but when there is cold, hard evidence, even just like do the math, the mathematical equation of like the chances of all of that being an accident.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just no.
But you know what's also interesting
garbage.
is he was the first doctor to ever be convicted of killing his patients. There were other doctors that had been investigated for
they were
killing their
acquitted.
patients, but they were all acquitted.
Yeah.
He was the first one to actually be convicted of killing his patients.
In England.
In England, yes. We're talking about England here.
I don't know about the U.S.
I
But
don't know.
yeah, so that was Dr. Death.
What's he getting you on the Dahmer scale there?
Okay, if we go based purely on amount of people that he killed, then he's a 10 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
But based on cruelty and all of that stuff,
I mean, he didn't hurt anyone. I mean, like he killed people, but he overdosed them
I think
on
it was
morphine.
like this self-aggrandizing.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think it was delusions of grandeur for him. I think he, honest to God, thought that he was putting people out of their misery.
Yeah, even with this whole thing where he does writing himself into the will and all that,
Yeah.
I think in his mind, she's going to die. This is a mercy killing anyways. It's not, I'm killing you for this. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. I could be completely and utterly wrong. So, I don't know. Based on sheer pure volume alone, he would be a 10 out of 10. But when you take all of the other stuff into consideration, I'm going to say like a 5.
Oh, God. He's even lower than that for me. I think he's like a 3 for me. I mean, he killed a fuck ton of people. Like, he killed a fuck ton of people. But he killed them in the least cruel way possible.
I'm very curious as to like people who hear this, if they think that we're just fucking assholes for having the Dahmer scale. I really want to find the actual psychological scale that they do rate it on, because we based our scale off of a real psychological scale that does exist that they use to determine the gravitas of serial killers. So it's not like we're total barbarians.
No, but to be fair, like, we use dark humor in all of our podcasts. We really do.
In all of our life.
And in all of our life, let's be real. And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. If you can be serious about it all the time, then like kudos to you, but my life is too serious as is. And this is a hard enough topic to talk about on its own without sarcasm and dark humor.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So I guess we need to put in a palate cleanser.
Palate cleanser.
This is the palate cleanser.
So I decided to go with some medical humor today.
Medical humor? Is it dark medical humor? It's just normal humor?
Medical humor.
What is this garbage that you are introducing in
palate cleanser?
Ugh, okay, whatever. Then I'm looking up a dad joke.
That's fine. So this one says, your x-rays showed a broken rib, but we fixed it with Photoshop.
What?
See, I think these are hilarious because I worked in the medical field for so long. So,
I just found one that's called 19 dad jokes that should not, under any circumstances, be told to kids.
Ooh, let's hear them.
These are dad jokes after dark. Gonorrhea would have been a great name for diarrhea medicine. Gonorrhea. I mean, that has to do with medicine. That's pertinent.
That's funny.
Oh my God. It's okay if your phone autocorrects fuck to duck because you're still using foul language.
Oh my God. That is the most dad joke I've ever heard.
My boss hates it when I shorten his name to Dick, especially because his name is Steve. Did you hear about the guy who dipped his testicles in glitter? They were pretty nuts.
Son, here's a riddle. What has 4 legs but isn't alive?
What?
Your dog.
Oh my God. Oh, this one is really, really, really bad. It's really bad.
Do it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Every girl is a squirter if you cut the right artery.
Oh.
Oh, I'm uncomfortable. We're definitely getting unfollowed for that one. If we made money off of this, we would be demonetized.
Probably.
I have the perfect body. It's at home in my freezer.
Oh my God.
There's a sign that says no hunting in cemetery, and it's a picture of Jeffrey Dahmer, and it says, I can't get fast food anywhere. Oh no.
Well, thank you for joining us on our bullshit this week, this day.
This day in bullshit.
This day in bullshit.
What?
Can we call our mini episodes that?
This day in bullshit?
This day in bullshit?
I mean, I'm totally fine with that.
Fine with that.
I'll take it. So, yeah, that was Harry Shipman. He was a shithead.
Yeah.
That killed lots of people.
Lots and lots of people.
Just add another one of these fucking tomfuckeries to our list of horrible things that the world does.
Horrible people that we like to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you have any commentary, feel free to drop us a message on Facebook, Instagram, at The Killer T, and we're now on Twitter at The Killer T. And you can also leave us a email if you want at thekillert@gmail.com.
Or send us a voice message when you listen on Spotify or Anchor.
Yeah, you can send us a voice message and we'll definitely listen to it.
Give you a shout out.
Yeah.
Put you on here.
Put you on blast if you're an asshole.
Yeah, we got you. Don't worry.
We're here for all fuckery.
All right, y'all. Until next week.
Bye.
Join us next week as we discuss the slave master, John Edward Robinson.